The economic ties between the United States and Russia have not disappeared altogether. Even in the middle of a severe war and a sweeping sanctions regime, but they have undergone a profound transformation. Historically, Russia was always a challenging yet increasingly predictable trading partner for American business. And prior to the Crimean crisis, and especially before the full scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, bilateral trade had its ebbs and flows with robust sectors such as energy, consumer goods, and technology gradually forming a complex economic relationship. However, the imposition of sanctions, initially under the Trump administration, the first Trump administration, and then further intensified under Biden, has led to a dramatic contraction in direct trade. For example, US exports to Russia have plummeted from multi-billion-dollar levels in previous years to a mere fraction of that volume, but it doesn't mean it's non-existent. And while imports have fallen precipitously, they haven't stopped entirely. And recent data indicates declines of over 85 to 90% compared to pre-war years, underscoring how US trade with Russia has effectively hit a two-decade low. And despite the headline-grabbing fall in official trade figures, underlying economic relationships have proved remarkably resilient. Many American companies have exited Russia in the wake of the invasion, and they did so with contingency plans or buyback clauses in place. And this cautious disengagement is coupled with rebranding strategies evidenced by familiar names like McDonald's and Burger King appearing under different guises, suggesting that while overt commerce has declined, the infrastructure and the latent market presence remains intact. And the persistence of such links reveals that global trade, especially in consumer goods and even certain services, can adapt to belligerent pressures, global pressures, with indirect channels and third country intermediaries. So re-establishing a normal trading relationship is far from straightforward, but it is inevitable. Sanctions once imposed tend to be politically and legally sticky, and history teaches us that while sanctions are relatively easy to impose, their removal is far more complex, that requiring both executive action and congressional approval, but removal is inevitable. Removal will take place. And moreover, the broader global context is in many ways impassive. It's unforgiving, but it's also inevitable. Any re-engagement would not only require a rollback of the current measures, but also a significant recalibration of US foreign policy towards Russia. High-level talks, such as the recent discussions in Riyadh, hinted a willingness on both sides to explore economic cooperation beyond the immediate issues in Ukraine, but such signals might be tempered by the enormous practical, legal and reputational risks involved. But where there's money to be made, there is an urgency to press ahead. And that urgency, as I say, I think is inevitable. And it's that desire to re-establish the trading relationship that already existed that might explain Trump's urgency to reassess the relationship between America and Russia. And for any resumption of US-Russian trade, several conditions would likely need to be met. First, the removal or easing of sanctions is paramount. The United States would need to see either a de-escalation of the conflict in Ukraine or a broader realignment in international relations that permits a phased re-engagement. And second, there must be a credible assurance that the regulatory and security risks associated with doing business in Russia can be managed again. And this means that companies, particularly those in sensitive sectors like energy or advanced technology, would require guarantees, often seen as unworkable under current political pressures. Thirdly, even if some sectors, notably natural resources, are poised for a comeback, the return to business as usual is unlikely to be uniform. Instead, a selective sector-by-sector re-engagement would probably occur, where companies with the most robust risk tolerance lead the way. While the deep-rooted economic links between the United States and Russia persist in some form, the landscape has been irreversibly altered by the war shift and the broad sanctions framework. Trade now operates at a fraction of its former volume, and even where American companies maintain a presence, it's often through indirect means or with strategies in place to facilitate a potential return should conditions improve. But that possibility is, I think, one of the things that is driving Trump. A return to the pre-crisis level of economic interdependence remains a highly challenging prospect, one that's contingent not only on changes in policy but also on substantial realignment in the world order. But just look at it from this point of view. Peace may not be the ultimate objective. Trade may be the ultimate objective. The restoration of this substantial trade is perhaps for Trump more important than the restoration of peace. It's peace to get something. It's peace to get the trade flowing again. That's not necessarily a bad thing, is it? But when you start probing, when you start looking at the way the trade has been paused, it's not really been stopped. It's been paused, rebranded, shelved, and a lot of that trade could be restarted. It may take a little bit of effort, but it could be restarted. And I think that is the mindset that is guiding a lot of this negotiation at the moment. This nuanced reality highlights that while trade links are still present, they've become a shadow of their former selves, but they are still there. This reflects the enduring power of economic interdependence and the transformative impact of this modern conflict. And the question really is whether whether the Ukraine invasion signals a permanent end to the relationship between America and Russia and the rest of the world, or whether it is just a pause, and the stuff that was shelved can be taken off the shelf and move forward. And remember, it's only 85% of trade that stopped. What about that small percentage of trade, which is not insignificant in terms of dollars and rubles, that continues behind the scenes? I think one has to think of trade, and one has to try to explain Trump's motives, because they can't just be the motives of a madman. We can't have two madmen in power, can we? Trump in the fridge and Putin in the fridge and Trump in the bathroom. It doesn't make any sense. But Trump, as we know, does all his paperwork in the bathroom. A lot of it is thrown down the loo.